He's crying. Bears help when you're crying. That's what they're for. She said it with the calm authority of someone who has tested this theory extensively and found it reliable. She was 4 years old, holding a worn brown teddy bear with one ear slightly floppier than the other, and she was already walking toward the man on the bench before her mother could process what was happening. The man was 33 years old, in a suit that cost more than most people's rent, sitting on a park bench in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, with his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands in the specific posture of someone who has walked out of a building and sat down because there was nowhere else adequate to put what they were carrying. He was not crying loudly, just the quiet kind, the kind that happens when you've been holding something so long your body decides to handle it without asking permission. The little girl placed the bear on his knee. He looked up. Her name was Blythe. Her eyes were serious and kind in equal measure. "His name is Cord," she said. "He's very good at sitting with people." The man looked at the bear, then at the child. Then he did something that surprised him. He took the bear and held it and did not give it back immediately. His name was Soren Hale, and he had a meeting in 2 hours where he was supposed to sign a workforce reduction plan that would eliminate 1,000 positions from his company before the end of the quarter. Her mother reached the bench 30 seconds later, slightly breathless. Wren Calloway was 30 years old, and 4 years of solo parenting, Blythe had refined her reflexes considerably while doing nothing to slow her daughter's instincts. She arrived to find her child standing beside a man in an expensive suit who was holding Cord the bear with both hands and looking at her daughter with an expression that was several things at once. "Blythe, sweetheart." "He was crying, Mama," Blythe said, with the patient reasonableness of someone explaining something obvious. Wren looked at the man. He looked at her with the slight transparency of someone whose composure has been briefly and completely dismantled by a 4-year-old with a stuffed animal. "I'm sorry," he said. Don't apologize," Wren said. She sat on the far end of the bench because the alternative was pulling Blythe away from someone who clearly needed a minute, and that felt wrong. "Take the minute." He took it. The three of them sat in the October park. The man, the mother, the child who had climbed up beside him and was now narrating Cord's personal history in a low, steady voice as though providing important context. Wren watched the man's face slowly change, not dramatically. The way ice changes. Not all at once, but at the edges first. His name was Soren Hale, founder and CEO of Hale Consumer Group, a mid-size retail and distribution company he had built from a single warehouse operation over 9 years. He was, by every external measure, successful. He was also, at this particular moment, sitting on a park bench, holding a child's bear and wondering when success had started requiring him to make decisions that kept him up at night. The workforce reduction had been presented to him by his CFO and 2 board members as an operational necessity. Costs had compressed. A major retail partner had reduced their orders. The math was the math. He had reviewed 3 presentations, asked all the questions, pushed back twice, and been shown each time the same figures arranged with different emphasis arriving at the same conclusion. He had asked for the weekend. They had given him until Tuesday afternoon. He had walked out of the building at noon because the walls had started to feel like the presentations, arranged to arrive at a conclusion he hadn't chosen. What he had been sitting with before Blythe arrived was a specific image. 1,000 people opening an email on a Thursday morning. Not a number. People. With Tuesday mornings and kids with bears and whatever it was they were managing on the other side of a paycheck he was about to remove. The bear in his hands was warm from Blythe's pocket. It had one ear that had been loved slightly more than the other. "What does he do?" Soren asked eventually. Blythe had paused in her narration. "Cord? He listens," Blythe said seriously. "He doesn't talk." "But he listens very well." Wren covered a smile. "What are you sad about?" Blythe asked. 4-year-olds, having offered their resources, generally expected some account of the situation. Soren looked at the bear. "I have to make a decision," he said. "That hurts a lot of people. And I'm not sure I've looked hard enough for the other way. Blythe considered this with her full attention. My mama always says if you don't like the answer, you haven't asked all the questions yet. Wren looked at her daughter. Then at the man. He looked at Wren. Did you teach her that? My grandmother taught me, Wren said simply. She passed it on. He was quiet for a long moment. The October park moved around them. Leaves, a dog, a cyclist, the ordinary afternoon continuing its work. I should get back, he said finally. He looked at the bear. Then at Blythe. Can I borrow him for a little while longer? Blythe's eyes went wide with the significance of the request. She looked at Cord, then at Soren with the focused assessment of someone making an important decision. You have to bring him back, she said. I will, he said. I promise. She nodded once with the gravity of a formal agreement. He walked back into his building at 2 o'clock with Cord the bear in his jacket pocket, which was not something he had anticipated doing. He called his CFO before the 3 o'clock meeting and said he needed the full employee data by department and function before he signed anything. The CFO said they'd been over this. Soren said he wanted to look at it differently. He spent 3 hours with his operations director and the data. He asked the questions that the presentations had arranged not to ask, specifically about which positions were being eliminated and which were being redistributed, about whether the reduction was eliminating roles or people, about what a phased voluntary separation program would cost versus an immediate cut. The answers, when they came without the presentation's framing, were different from the conclusions. Not entirely. The company needed to reduce costs. But the path to reducing them was not the one he had been handed. There was a slower path, a more expensive path in the short term. A path that preserved 630 of the 1,000 positions through restructuring, voluntary transitions, and a 2-year recovery timeline that required harder decisions at the top rather than the bottom. He chose the harder path. It was signed by Thursday. He found them at the same park the following Saturday. He had gone back twice before that, hoping, and been rewarded on the 3rd attempt by a 4-year-old in a yellow jacket standing near the fountain watching pigeons with the focused attention of a field researcher. Blythe saw him first. She looked at his jacket pocket. He reached in and took out Cord, who had spent the week on his desk. You brought him back, she said. I promised, he said. She took the bear with both hands and checked him over with the professional thoroughness of someone inspecting returned property. Satisfied, she held him against her chest. Wren was beside her, watching. Did it help? She asked quietly. The sitting. He looked at the fountain, the October park, the ordinary Saturday morning. He thought about 630 people who would open a different email this Thursday, not the one he had almost signed. Your grandmother was right, he said. I hadn't asked all the questions yet. Something in Wren's face went quiet and warm. She usually was, she said. Blythe tugged his sleeve. Cord says you're going to be okay now, she said. He looked down at this 4-year-old who had walked across a park and placed a bear in a stranger's hands because he was crying, and she had something that helped. He thought about the 1,000 people, about the questions, about the specific, irreversible generosity of a child who gives away her comfort object because someone else needs it more. Tell Cord thank you, he said. Blythe held the bear up and relayed this information solemnly. Then she looked back at Soren. He says you're welcome, she said, and that you should come back and visit. Wren looked at him sideways with the expression of someone who is trying not to smile and not entirely succeeding. The October morning continued in its good, ordinary way. A man who had almost made a terrible decision stood in a park with a bear named Cord and a 4-year-old who had walked toward him when everyone else would have walked past, and felt, for the first time in a very long month, like someone standing on the right side of something. Walk toward the crying stranger. Give the thing that costs you. Ask the question you're afraid the answer will require something of you. That is not inconvenience. That is what we are here for. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.